There are vendors, and I'm not going to name them, that have been created fairly recently, and they were created in mind that at some point in the future, which is today, they were going to need additional capabilities. But you take something, there are other applications where those capabilities are I won't say they're afterthoughts, but they're add-ons and plugins. And there's a huge difference in those two approaches.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our number one priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the WBS Podcast. I'm Sam Gupta, your host and principal consultant at digital transformation consulting firm Elevate IQ. If you're a startup, you will have several options in the QuickBooks portfolio to get your business up and running without requiring deep IT or accounting capabilities. As you grow, you might need to upgrade to several products in the QuickBooks portfolio and try add-ons such as FishBowl. However, while they have deeper capabilities functionally to support your small business, they are not designed to support the scale and transaction volume needed by a company with 8-digit revenue. In today's episode, we invited a panel of industry experts for a live discussion on LinkedIn to discuss major stories in the ERP and digital transformation space and an objective and independent review of QuickBooks and FishBowl's capabilities. We covered several grounds, including the overview of different product offerings from QuickBooks and their positioning in the market. Finally, we covered a deep review of FishBowl capabilities along with recent reviews from public sites. With that, let's get to the conversation. Hello everybody, welcome to today's show. So we are going to be moving with everybody's intros. Andy, would you like to introduce yourself if you don't mind?
Sure. My name's Andy Pratico. I've been in the ERP business for manufacturing for over 40 years. I'm in Vancouver, Canada, but I lived in the US for 11 years and I worked with over 1,000 manufacturers in my career.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Andy. Your experience is going to be super beneficial for the panel. Ted, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Sure. I'm Ted Needleman. I'm a former editor of Accounting Technology magazine. Been a contributing editor to Accounting Today for the last 27 years, and a frequent reviewer of accounting software for different places like PC Magazine.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Ted. And if anybody has written anything about QuickBooks, I think you have written the most. So your experience is going to be super meaningful for the panel. Thank you so much for being here, Ted. Okay, Phil, can I move to you next if you don't mind?
Sure thing. Phil Kerper with Ringling Business Solutions, coming to you from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I've been in manufacturing type businesses for 40 years. I've been in the C-suite for the past 2 decades, running mid-market companies, and experienced a lot of different ERP installations and startups and changes, and a lot of digital transformation work.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Phil. Obviously, your experience running these digital transformation in the real manufacturing situation is going to be so meaningful for our panel. David, can I move to you next, if you don't mind?
Sure. Hey, everybody. My name's Dave Chrysler. I spent more than 20 years of my career in manufacturing, working for a large publicly traded corporation before starting my consulting business, where we work with private business owners and entrepreneurs to help them create the systems needed to stop working in their business so it can grow.
Okay, amazing. And your experience is going to be super meaningful as well. Thank you so much for being here, David. Obviously, you spent a lot of time working with small to medium-sized businesses, and that is probably going to be the focus of today's conversation.
Thanks,
Okay,
Sam.
so we are going to jump right into the topic. We have some of the stories to share with you, and one of the stories is going to be related to DCOM. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with the DCOM system. This is present in the small to medium-sized businesses space. They compete with some of the systems such as NetSuite or Acumatica. If you have not heard of it, mostly because they don't really have their own channel. So sometimes they are not going to get as much media coverage as the other ERP providers. So one of the things that are happening in the market related to DCOM is they have acquired the CPG capabilities. And I think the company that they acquired, they are going to be far deeper overall with respect to their forecasting capabilities in the manufacturing space. And that is something I don't think they had. So they are really deepening their capabilities in the CPG space. I think their product is primarily positioned towards manufacturers and distributors, but now they are deepening their capabilities in the CPG and the brand manufacturer space. So that's what is happening with DCOM. I'll move to the next story. So here, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Unit 4. Unit 4 is doubling down their capacity in the APAC region. It is the newer ERP platform that they had launched for the mid-market. It's called ERPX. And if you guys are not familiar with Unit 4, that is positioned towards some of the service-centric firms. They do a lot of business in the public sector space. They compete directly with the Oracle. It was primarily targeted towards the enterprise space, but now they seem to be penetrating the SMB space. And as part of that move, I think they have a significant market share overall in the APAC region, and that's why they are doubling down their capability in there.
Sam, I just really want to make it's nitpicking, but SMB is not the same as SME, and I think that distinction needs to be made, especially in this type of format.
Sure. Do you want to clarify that a bit? Why do you believe that SMB is not same as SME, and where exactly are you going to draw the line?
I draw the line at the complexity of the business, and rather enterprise software has generally in the past been on the size either by the number of employees or by the dollar value of business per year, rather than the need for sophisticated features. So we're talking really about SME software in this forum. So just for your listeners, I think that distinction is an important one.
Yeah, sure. I definitely agree. If you are talking about the complexity, typically from my experience, not many people do that distinction. So I'll be careful from now on, I guess. So the next story that we have is related to Aptean. And if you guys are not familiar with Aptean ERP system, they are also in the ERP space. Their market offering is similar to Infor. They specialize in the industry specific software. So the recent acquisition that they did this week, they are trying to go deeper into the apparel market. So, which is going to be very interesting. They are trying to really penetrate into the fashion market. If you look at some of the other solutions in the fashion market, I think Infor is fairly deep. I don't know which other solutions are going to be as deep, but Aptean has similar strategy as Infor overall from the ERP perspective. So this I find very interesting overall from the market perspective. I am actually going to move to the next story. So the next story is related to SAP, and SAP has acquired a new platform that is going to be in the SuccessFactors portfolio. Okay, it's not really the ERP play. So the new platform that they have acquired is going to help them add some of the AI capabilities and also help them get data and the personalization from many different systems. And the majority of the SuccessFactors implementation, as far as my understanding goes, are going to be fairly complex. So I think this is going to help them overall from the personalization perspective. I'll move to the next story. So this is the new ERP system that you guys may not have heard. This is coming from Europe. They have been making a lot of waves. This news is coming from TechCrunch that they have acquired a lot of funding They have roughly 1,000 installations in Europe, and they are really penetrating this whole e-commerce market. In my experience, I think there is a significant gap overall when you talk about connectivity to different marketplaces, the channels, and if you are trying to find an ERP that is going to work for a real e-commerce business, it's a very good space to be. I don't know if the traditional ERP systems, even the cloud native ones, can really or have these capabilities.
Yeah, in my experience, Sam, everything has been kind of an add-on feature to be able to make that connectivity generally seamless.
Exactly. So here, again, from my experience, when we think about the ERP, it's really going to be out of the box. So I think what these guys are trying to do is they are going to provide all of these integrations out of the box. So let's say if you are an e-commerce shop, you need to connect to your Shopify, your eBay, your Amazon. Maybe you have Magento, you have WooCommerce. So all of this is going to come out of the box. You don't have to use those add-ons.
I think it's really interesting that they're building out from an e-commerce position into ERP rather than the reverse, which is much more common. And it'll be interesting to take a look at how they approach this and how successful they are in the market. It's a fairly unique approach as far as the construction of the application.
Yeah, Ted, is not Salesforce attempting a similar thing, coming from CRM into ERP?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And doing well.
So
is this company in North America now, Sam?
No, this one, they have done really well in Europe at this point in time.
Gotcha. Yeah. That's why I haven't heard of them. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Just one distinction. So Salesforce is definitely trying to penetrate into the ERP market, but their target market is not really ERP at this point of time. I mean, they are really into the CRM market, but they don't necessarily talk to the e-commerce channels. Even though they have the e-commerce platform, their e-commerce platform is really targeted for the enterprises. They don't necessarily have the SMB play when you talk about the e-commerce platform itself. This positioning is slightly different. So if you compare platforms such as Odoo actually does really, really well in the e-commerce space because of, the way their product is designed. They actually started more as the sort of the selling into the e-commerce play, right? So they do really, really well in the e-commerce space. There are some other ERP systems that are really focused on this whole e-commerce ecosystem, and e-commerce overall, in my experience, is very different play than your traditional businesses, and the marketplaces are growing on a daily basis. So in my mind, I think this is a very, very, very interesting play overall.
You might even consider e-commerce as a vertical.
I agree to some extent, yeah.
It depends how it aligns with your traditional business, my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. So e-commerce is definitely a very exciting market and the opportunity, and sometimes it's very hard to distinguish whether we are talking about manufacturing e-commerce. Sometimes the e-commerce slide into the construction market. It's all over the place. So yeah, you are absolutely right that could be an industry in itself.
And that's a really interesting way to put it, Ted, because if you think of CRM and digital marketing, those two really connect. You think of ERP into logistics, into supply chain, into finance, that connects. And then you have the e-commerce, and it certainly connects, but it's kind of its own thing as well.
Absolutely correct.
Exactly. I agree completely. If you guys have any other comments, I think those are the stories that we had for today. And the next segment that we have is going to be really assessing the QuickBooks capabilities, followed by FishBowl capabilities. So we have many different slides that are going to provide the perspective into how QuickBooks is structured. And we all are going to be analyzing this together.
I think what I notice is that there's a lot of things going on. It's a very active market, not only this last week, but almost continuously.
It's crazy how it's been. It's like one of the ones that Sam introduced me to 2-3 weeks ago about Infor and their EIM product. Like, it's amazing how things are changing so fast, and so many acquisitions are happening right now.
And what I find particularly interesting, looking at this from a 5,000-foot view, is that the market is expanding up and down from the mid-market.
Yeah.
And, the segmentation is not really, it's kind of evaporating to a large extent. I think that's great.
Yeah, so I completely agree with you guys. I think the way I am seeing right now, especially in the traditional segment where you have the slightly more established ERP vendors, they are going through the consolidation phase, is how I like to define. There are some crazy scenarios where Plex got acquired by Rockwell. So some of these hardware vendors are actually moving to your ERP play. And then obviously you have some of the traditional acquisition where PE companies are actually acquiring some of the companies. I think, which is the other one? The QAD got acquired, right, by the PE companies. Well, yeah, so there are very interesting movements. And the reason why I personally like to track these things in the market is because they are going to have implications on your product. So typically ERP system that you are going to buy, you are going to buy for 5-10 years. So you definitely need to pay attention to where the product is positioned. And if there might be any likelihood of them getting acquired by someone, if that happens, then typically their product strategy is going to change. So that should be a factor when you are evaluating any sort of software that is going to be there for roughly 5 to 10 years for you.
Absolutely. I mean, in the past, everybody's thought the whole concept about purchasing a best of breed has been very attractive, getting the best of each of the topics. But now with so many acquisitions, if you're buying multiple products, you don't know if they're going to talk together in the future, if they get acquired by a competitor or who knows what.
I think eventually what's going to happen is everybody is going to be owned either by Microsoft, Oracle, or Salesforce.
Don't worry about it.
And maybe a related topic, and it certainly will relate when we get into the QuickBooks conversation, is just the philosophy of open protocol and a lot of open ecosystem of apps, or the philosophy of a much more closed protocol. You know, an Apple protocol with their App Store, which is what QuickBooks has chosen, interestingly, and or, you know, the big boys who tended to be, you know, the Microsofts, the SAPs, who tended to be by the competition once they're worth adding and make it part of my ecosystem. Those trends, do you guys see those trends change? I still see there's a bifurcation of kind of two philosophies of how these companies are building out their product lines.
I don't see that changing, at least in the short term.
Well, that's, you know, partially because that's a lot of the software was designed not to build out, but essentially to plug in. And if it's going to be done effectively, the core concept of the software, of the application itself, needs to take into account the fact that you're going to need other abilities in the future and other capabilities. And there aren't a lot of vendors that have. I mean, a lot of this stuff is not new. It's, you know, been updated, but it's to some extent there's still a bit of legacy in a lot of these applications. You know, there are vendors, and I'm not going to name them, that have been created fairly recently, and you know, they were created in mind that at some point in the future, which is today, they were going to need additional capabilities. But you take something, you know, there are other applications where those capabilities are I won't say they're afterthoughts, but they're add-ons and plugins, and there's a huge difference in those two approaches.
No matter what the ERP salesman tells you.
Yep. Well, and a related story, Ted, is a company I was just leading. We had Sage on-prem, and we were looking to upgrade, and going to Sage in the cloud was as much of an implementation as going to a different platform.
Oh, I know.
So it also changed our decision track to say, okay, well, one would think, you know, you would just upgrade to Sage in the cloud. That was a full implementation anyways. So we looked at Dynamics, we looked at other platforms, ended up with Dynamics, but the project was going to be big either way, and that opened us up actually to some other thoughts.
Well, Sage, you know, Sage is an interesting company. Again, it's built by acquisitions over the years, but Sage's real design to expand product is Intercom. And I mean, it was designed from the beginning to be a Windows and cloud-based system. And a lot of Sage's other products have kind of been ported into the space rather than designed from the bottom up.
Okay, guys, just in the interest of time, moving right along with the QuickBooks conversation, I think this is going to be slightly deeper overall in terms of the choices we have And in fact, Amizi, Ted, related to your comment about add-on versus a real ERP system. So sometimes, let's say if you look at systems such as FishBowl, they are sold as the ERP system, but we all know that they are not really the ERP system. If you actually think about the buyer, for example, let's say if I'm the buyer and if I don't have as much IT experience as some of us in the room, then obviously it's going to be very hard for me to distinguish between, okay, what is an ERP and what is the add-on. So if we can highlight the issues that you are going to get because of add-on, I think that's going to be super beneficial for our listeners. So I'll give you a quick brief overall in terms of how QuickBooks is structured, and if you guys have any sort of comments here with respect to the feature set. So one of the takeaways that I want you guys to take from here is going to be when you look at the feature set. I mean, if you look at, let's say, the track inventory is going to be a very vague name, but when customers are actually going to look at it, they are going to think that, you know what, I have my inventory covered because QuickBooks or FishBowl can track the inventory and I am good. The devil's always going to be in details. So those are the details that we are going to show today in terms of what details you should be looking at when you are trying to evaluate these ERP systems. So just 100,000 foot level, when you are going to buy QuickBooks, you are going to have two options, okay? So QuickBooks is really designed for the small businesses, startups. It's not designed to be an ERP system. If somebody says that it is the ERP system, they just don't know what they are talking about. It's not even, I don't think Intuit is going to claim that they are an ERP system because it's really targeted for the small, super small businesses. So now you are going to get two flavors. Number one is going to be QuickBooks Online, which is their cloud version. It's going to be significantly limited. Obviously, when you are starting your business, it's going to be sufficient because you don't really need all those bells and whistles. But when you outgrow that online version, then most likely the next spot that you are going to have is probably going to be QuickBooks Desktop. And they use the name called QuickBooks Desktop because it's designed to run on a desktop. It's not designed to be an enterprise system. And I think I'm going back to Ted's distinction when he mentioned that you should be distinguishing between SMB and SME. I think we can apply this distinction here as well. So I am going to pause here, guys. Do you have any comments overall with respect to QuickBooks Online?
No, the comment you were making, Sam, mentioning that one field, track inventory. To the naive or neophyte purchaser, they read that, they go, that's what I want to do. And the price is great. Where's my charge card? The fact is that what does track inventory mean?
Yep.
Nobody, yeah. I have no idea.
Yeah.
And you said the devil's in the details.
Accounting system that you can get off, for a small enterprise that you can get on there. You can close your books. You get some visibility on costs. You got some tax capabilities that can connect. When you get deeper into this list, even track time. Okay, I'm right there, Andy, with you on what does track time mean. This software package in these versions plus in advance, there's not much there.
No.
And track inventory, track time. And so I think that as they get to the deeper ones here, I think that's where it gets very questionable of how broad those statements really are and what they really mean.
Phil, I agree with you. And I think you also have to take into account QuickBooks Desktop is not one product. Okay. QuickBooks Desktop is not the same as QuickBooks Enterprise version. There's not a lot of difference other than the number of users supported. But
is that the only difference, Ted?
It's not the only difference, but it's a major difference.
Okay.
QuickBooks Enterprise is meant to run on a network. It's not meant as a single user system running on your desktop. It's meant to run on a network with a central database. So there's a bit of difference. It's not necessarily better for somebody, but if you have a lot of different people that might be addressing the system in different areas at the same time, then you would look at enterprise version. It will support. They have different numbers of supported users depending on where you're looking, but it'll support between 30 and 40 simultaneous users. And
okay. But is there functionality differences though?
They're minor. They're
minor.
But your data is sitting on a central server.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
The big deal right there. And I one of my complaints, if you will, and if you're not familiar with these software packages, those types of, what's in the cloud, how that it requires a server that it's not sitting on a desktop. They're not real forthcoming in telling you about that.
No.
You either have to dig or you got to ask a salesman some good questions about how that actually structured. Same as what the difference between their cloud versions and their desktop versions is not well discussed.
Well, I'll tell you,
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Pardon me.
You need to understand that Intuit took a very, very smart decision at a very early part of its existence, that they went to certified advisors, which are resellers and accountants. And basically, I don't know what the exact numbers are, but a lot of their sales are through support people that can support this stuff. So it's an advantageous approach for smaller businesses that don't have a lot of IT experience or network experience. So
guys, we are going to dig into all of that. In my mind, when I look at it, this is going to be, let's say if you're simply starting, you don't necessarily need to track your time. Here you are really including 3 users. So basically what Intuit is saying is, once you actually have 3 employees, then you can move on to here. You might be able to track your time, but you will not be able to do any sort of inventory, or for the most part, this is probably going to be your either financials or service based business that you might be able to run using this version. Now, in this particular version, you might be able to do the light inventory. That's why you have the track inventory. They are including 5 users. So let's say if you are a small retail-centric organization, maybe distribution, you are simply starting off, you are selling some goods, maybe you are going to be okay. Maybe you are a auto repair shop, something like that. They have the inventory. So for them, it is going to be okay. But if you are a sophisticated manufacturing organization, obviously this is not going to be enough. And we are actually going to be looking at the kind of fields you will be able to track using the track inventory feature in QuickBooks Online. And then this one has a lot of different features, but they are not the features that are going to be sufficient for any sort of manufacturing company or distribution company. They are slightly more technical in nature, where you can probably customize your access because your team size is actually increasing. So right now you have, say, 25 users. That's why you have customized access by role, just because your finance organization is probably going to get bigger. That's why you have all of this. So again, if you have slightly bigger service-centric organization, you might be able to run with this, but it'll not be sufficient for any sort of distribution, retail, manufacturing-centric organizations.
Just one last thing to add about your comment in terms of, starting with Intuit Online and then potentially moving into desktop or their enterprise platform that they have. They do not make it very easy to kind of fill, to your point, that migration. You would think it'd be very simple to take all of the data, all of the transactions and move it. Yeah, it is. And it is very clear in their documentation. I've had 2 different clients in this exact predicament. They started with the online version because, kind of what we've already walked through. They needed additional functionality. That was one of the considerations, was to go back to the desktop version because of the additional functionality. And when we went to look at what did that migration process look like, it's very clear in the documentation that most of the data will be transferred, and you basically have to go figure out what did not get transferred and do that line by line. So if you've gone ahead and been running online for many years, in the case of my one client, he's been on there for 7 years now, you're talking about a lot of manual work to figure out exactly what we would need to do to migrate backwards. So I felt like that was an important point to make.
It's a really good point. And I'll make this real tight, Sam, because I know you got to move on, and they also completely have made a mess out of good, better, best philosophy. There's 4 of them. They're different. They should have a good, better, best on advanced for higher users, because this really doesn't. It's supposed, good, better, best supposed to point you to the most popular and have a low percentage of the people go the high price and optimize your pricing in the plus between the 25 and the $40 in basic marketing terms. And actually, the advance is a package for a particular type of user that happens to have 25 people.
I think their marketing strategy, from my point of view, and again, it's going to depend on where you're looking, but it seems to me that they're trying to drive most of their users online. And I mean, migration is generally with QuickBooks a one-way street. It's from the desktop to the cloud, and not necessarily back the other direction.
That's very true, Ted, and I've experienced it going that way, and it's seamless.
Yeah, and I think that's the general trend of the market. I mean, see, the whole market is moving towards cloud. So obviously, Intuit is trying to do that as well, because obviously, in the long term, they are going to make more money, and they need to be sustainable as well. That's why every single vendor is actually trying to push to the cloud at this point of time. So desktop is probably not going to be there. I don't know how long that is going to be there, but there is a clear direction in terms of the whole enterprise software market that everybody is trying to push their customers to cloud. So Intuit is no different. But right now, if you actually look at the capabilities of QuickBooks Online, they are not even close to what QuickBooks Desktop offers. And that's exactly what we are going to look into in detail today. So moving right along, just because we are tight on time right now. So if you look at the track inventory, that comment that we had, so the inventory feature is super, super low. The only detail that you have here is you can track product, the screen as well, what details you have for the inventory. So if you are trying to run the real business, you are going to fall super short. So if you actually, and again, typically when you look at the ERP evaluation, you are actually looking at the data sheet and you are doing the tick, 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 tick. Okay, the feature set met. And then I'm actually going to select QuickBooks. But if you actually selected QuickBooks in this way, then obviously it is not going to work for your business. And that's exactly what our goal is. So if you actually look at the inventory screen, and Andy, I mean, obviously you have looked at a lot of different ERP systems, and you all have looked at a lot of different ERP systems. So there are hardly 5 to 6 fields for the inventory. Now, if you are running a serious manufacturing or the distribution organization, obviously, even though they are saying that, they can track the inventory, but what is the degree of that tracking? There are 5 to 6 fields. An average distribution organization or the manufacturing organization is probably going to have 100 different data points, if not more, related to the inventory, because they need to do the planning. They need to do a lot of different things from the manufacturing, from the warehousing perspective. So
but apparently it's good for ride-em mowers, though.
As long as you're not making them.
Exactly. That's the point.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
I think one problem that I have with not only QuickBooks, but for there are others in this kind of segment, is that unless you're using your accountant, you may not have the options of the way you cost your inventory. A lot of inventories use multiple different types, LIFO, FIFO, with specific costs. And it's not necessarily locked into one. It depends on the product. It depends, on kitting and bill of materials. And, you're talking about a manufacturing business, and that you really have to have those features.
Yeah, you are absolutely right, Ted. In fact, I mean, in some of the richer ERP system as well, we have seen that, sometimes that is not supported at the item level. But if you actually look at the QuickBooks Desktop or the Enterprise, we have slides for that as well. QuickBooks Desktop actually support all of those accounting standards.
Yes.
At the item level, to be honest. So QuickBooks Desktop has a lot deeper capabilities overall from the finance perspective, a little bit of inventory, but obviously it's not going to have everything. When you are going to do the, let's say, manufacturing accounting, you would require an add-on. And that's exactly what we are going to talk next about the FishBowl. Okay, I'm pretty sure you guys have seen a purchase order as well. It's very rarely going to be this lean, to be honest. Okay, even the purchase order is going to be far busier. And Phil or Dave, you guys have run a real manufacturing company. I don't know how many companies are going to be okay just by looking at this purchase order, which is 10 fields right now. I think, on the purchase order, if I look at the PO of a decent sized manufacturing organization, it's going to be far busier. There are going to be a lot more business rules that are going to be applicable. The pricing is going to be far more complex. The discounting is going to be far more complex. The way you are going to sell your goods is going to be far more complex. Things like cross promotion, allocation. So all of that is not there in QuickBooks. So even though they are claiming that track inventory, it doesn't mean anything just going by the Andy's comment.
Yep, agree 100%. I mean, not as shallow compared to a real inventory data set, but certainly very shallow. There's not enough there to do much.
There's not enough there to do much, but it's like we talked about before we started. Everything boils down to what that company needs. Because Obviously, when you look at the size of companies, the bottom of the pyramid, there is hundreds and thousands and millions of companies out there. Well, this would be enough.
Yeah, great
And
point.
that's why they sell
grow.
so many copies of
Yeah,
And that's why
QuickBooks.
they sell so many.
It's a great point. I see it as a journey depending on how the company is scaling.
Absolutely.
So and initially you're starting up, and this is an awesome package to get you started on. And those types of basic ordering or small SKU counts, complete assembly SKU one off, not any batching and things like that. It can do those things. But then as you scale, and I think to your needs analysis, I think it's so important to understand what is the business going to look like in 2, 4, and 6 years, and that conversation, it can be the foundation of saying, okay, how is this right for me, and how long will it be right for me?
Well, I've talked to a lot of companies that have the smaller versions of QuickBooks, and I work in more full-featured type ERPs. And commonly they'll say, well, listen, yeah, we need to get an ERP. And I'll say, okay, what are your alternatives? And they'll say, well, we're having a look at the enterprise version of QuickBooks. And to the naive buyer, just because it has that word, they think and it's still a reasonable price. I guess that's $2,200 per month. Is that right? Or per year?
So that's exactly what we are looking at, Andy. So right now, if this is the desktop and the enterprise version. So these are, and to Ted's comment that, enterprise is probably going to be a different product than the desktop. I don't have those details, but maybe you want to ask that question, because when your products are going to be different, the database structure is going to be different. When the database structure is going to be different, the migration path is going to be completely different. So that's a very valid point that you really want to ask, okay, is it a completely different product or is it the same product? So here, if you actually pay attention to the pricing and the feature set of the enterprise, you are going to find the way the marketing presentation is done, you are probably going to find every single feature that you probably need for the manufacturing company. But when you actually look at the actual document, it's going to be super lean. So in this particular case, if you look at the pricing of the desktop and the enterprise version, so if you look at the enterprise, I think that's going to be the most robust version of QuickBooks, which is going to have all the bells and whistles. And let's say if you are using FishBowl, in my opinion, I think they are going to require that you have to have the enterprise version, or they might not work just with the desktop. I'm not too sure about that, but I think they'll require the deeper capabilities. But enterprise version is supposed to be the most robust overall. The price of that is going to be roughly around $700 per user. Obviously, it's going to be on sale, and you can get the discounts. But
and
that's going to be the one-time price per user, $700. So let's say you need to do the competition in terms of what you are getting. In my experience, when you are clubbing all of your add-ons together, QuickBooks price together, there is no free lunch. It will come about to the same, because at the end of the day, you are buying something, right? So again, pay attention to the price point as well. QuickBooks is not cheap when you are looking at bigger installations. So here, that's the pricing. Now, if you actually look at different feature sets, it does say that it can scale up to 40 users. I don't know. So Ted, your comment related to it can work in the network setting, which I completely agree. I think it does have the client and the server. So you can install it as a client on a computer, and then you can actually, punch in your details. So you can access this in the network setting. You have different roles and profiles that you can set up, but still the feature set that you are going to have are going to be really for a sophisticated finance organization. It's not going to have those operational bells and whistles that any manufacturing distribution retail organization is probably going to need. So moving right along, I don't think there are any other takeaways here. We have roughly 200 reports in the QuickBooks Enterprise, which I find phenomenal, to be honest. For the systems like QuickBooks, they are providing 200 reports, which is amazing.
Sam, can I just drop something in your lap here? One thing with QuickBooks is it uses a proprietary database system, okay, where a lot of ERP systems will use Oracle or HANA, where you can use SQL to do inquiries. You can't do that with QuickBooks. It's a proprietary database. Yeah, so that's got to be a consideration.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
I did not know that either. That is really interesting.
And is it really a database, or is it just a file? Because they seem to be listing it as a file.
It's a relational database as far as I know. But again, it was developed internally.
but does it have the same deeper transactional capabilities? And what are the odds that, so let's say if I'm using Oracle database, obviously it's designed to scale. It's designed for all of those, error scenarios if something happens inside the database. But is my QuickBooks database is going to have all those bells and whistles to be able to recover itself?
For the target market, it's probably enough. Again, I think that when you need those features, you're gonna have to step up to somebody else's offering. But it's something to keep in mind, and that's one of the reasons that there's a limitation on the number of users.
I think the key is that we had the whole list of the functionality. Too often companies, especially small ones, will have a list of functionality they've defined and check it off according to what the brochure or the website says. And they think, therefore, it must do what I want it to do. But the problem is that these definitions are meaningless. You have to research them. You have to work into them. You have to figure out exactly what these things do if it even comes close to what you want. Most companies buy it, pig in a poke, and then 2, 3, 4, 5 years later, they wish they never had.
Well, that's really why Intuit built out its advisor system. Is really because if you're buying a pig in a poke, if you're not using somebody that's familiar with the software,
right?
And that's true of not only QuickBooks; it's true of a lot of applications.
Every software, yeah, absolutely, at one level or another, yeah, every.
Okay, in the interest of time, guys, we have a lot of grounds to cover, and we want to make sure that we are able to provide at least the details and the feature set that comes with the enterprise so that we are able to discuss all of that. QuickBooks does come with a client version where you can do the remote desktop, but it's supposed to be slightly more on-prem. It's not meant to be the cloud, so your QuickBooks Enterprise is not really going to be cloud. It's very on-prem. It's designed to be on-prem, but you can probably configure in your network and you can have up to 40 users if you want to. And we are actually going to look at the feature set overall of the QuickBooks Enterprise as well in terms of what it can support from their data sheets, so that we are going to really look into the data sheets as opposed to looking at the marketing hype. So what I want you guys to pay attention is, number one, the whole look and feel is very desktop. That's what is the most important lesson here. And the other lesson that I want you to pay attention to is the file. So I don't know if it is really designed to be a database, to be honest. The QuickBooks also uses the term called file. It might not have all of the scalability aspect that you might have with a slightly more sophisticated database. And the best analogy that I like to use when I look at QuickBooks is more like a bicycle. Okay, so it is designed to be used in the short runs. Okay, but if you use it as a track, okay, to go for the long distance, you know what is going to happen to your bicycle. It's going to break, guys. Okay, so I have seen cases where people say that, you know what, QuickBooks can scale. I've used until $50 million in my business, and there were no issues whatsoever. Sure, you may have got lucky, but that's not how you want to run your business, because the database, I don't believe it's designed to scale at that point. So you want to be slightly careful. I don't know. I could not find the transactional limitations. I would love to dig into the transactional limitations, because the database providers are supposed to provide that. You know, what is the limitation of the database, where it is supposed to be used, what kind of operating system it should be running on. If you look at the memory footprint of the QuickBooks, it says that the desktop that it uses, it's actually lower than your laptop, to be honest. Okay, so that's the kind of memory footprint. And obviously it's not going to be Oracle server, because that requires far bigger server to be able to run. Again, QuickBooks is not designed for very large companies, very large data structures. They can do user permissions and roughly 115 different activities, which I find phenomenal.
What does that mean? What does that mean, Sam?
So these are going to be the different activities that you are going to require for, let's say, if you have the Sarbanes-Oxley compliance, right? So you are going to have, for example, this particular user is supposed to do only this process, the other user is not. So those are really your business processes. Am I making sense here?
Yeah. You also, you don't want your data entry clerks, assuming that you have people that are doing that, looking at your financial statements or the payroll necessarily. You want to segment access to specific areas of the accounting and operational business. So, that's why you use user permissions.
That's right.
Right, but I don't know that that's 115 at a time. I think that's just how many permissions are out there, right? How many different things you can check, right?
Oh,
These are going to be permission set.
Yeah, so it's not a capacity question, Andy. It's just what the choices for each user are.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Well, you can't have 115 simultaneous users.
Yeah, it's a weird number. But anyways, move along, Sam.
Yeah. So we are going to have roughly 14 predefined roles. In an organization, is probably going to need far more, in my experience, depending upon how segmented your roles are. But maybe 14 is going to be enough. But that's the limitation that you have. Okay. So moving right along, the customer information itself is very lean overall. Okay. In an organization where you are going to have deeper financial requirement, your customer screen is going to look far busier. So pay attention to the details. Look at the data sheet of every product that you are evaluating and see if you are able to compare the fields with your business, how busy your current sales orders are, how busy your purchase orders are. And that's how you can differentiate whether the system is really going to work for your need or not. So if you look at decent size, ERP systems, even the smaller ones, they are going to have far more details there on the customer screen as well. You are going in this particular case, you don't even have the bank account information. QuickBooks does not really mandate the bank account when you actually create the customer. You can create whatever you want. So it's a free flow game. And sometimes that actually comes as a shock when people are switching from your QuickBooks to customer. Why do you require bank account? Because you need to do credit check. And that is the functionality that is actually built as part of your ERP system. QuickBooks is not going to have that by default.
That's a great example.
So again, moving right along here, we have bunch of vendor screen. Again, the price screen is fairly lean as well. If you actually look at the comparison, it does not really have all the bells and whistles that you are probably going to require, but it may be okay for the smaller organization. In my mind, again, if you compare this with a slightly more robust ERP system, the ERP system is going to have far deeper capabilities overall from the permission set perspective and things that you can control from the financial control perspective. Okay, surprisingly enough, the QuickBooks Enterprise does come with a very deep fixed asset functionality, which is amazing. I could not find anything that's not going to be here, especially for the smaller organization. So again, because it's designed to be more of the finance solution, so that's why maybe it has all of the bells and whistles that a finance person is going to need. And they are probably going to need a lot of functionality from the fixed asset perspective. So this is probably going to be fairly comparable with your other ERP systems, the smaller ones at least. Okay, the QuickBooks does support the BOMs, which is very surprising, but the BOM is going to be fairly lean overall for the manufacturing organization.
Just it's single level bills and it's only average cost accounting. It's no standard cost accounting.
And never discuss bombs when you're at the airport, Sam.
Next, the cycle count. So in my experience, I think the cycle count functionality is fairly detailed and fairly intuitive. You might not find as detailed functionality for cycle count in some of the ERP systems. So this is fairly deep. Overall, you have the color coding, etc., which is amazing. I really like this in QuickBooks. You can actually change the component, on the fly in any assembly, which is amazing. Again, These are the substitution, which is fairly advanced functionality overall in a manufacturing organization. QuickBooks is providing that, but the mindset that QuickBooks is actually using, because I think I'm going back to Ted's comment that QuickBooks is really designed for SMEs. So they are thinking that even though you are small, you are going to require a lot of functionality overall. So I'll give you all of the functionality. Now you figure it out whether it's going to scale, whether you can keep your data safe or not. That's not my problem. You can do whatever you want with it. But I will provide you everything that you need. Okay.
Well, that's why there are so many add-ons.
Exactly. And the ecosystem, I think we are going to look at the marketplace as well. There are some really, really good add-ons in the QuickBooks ecosystem. Okay. So, by the way, the QuickBooks does support lot number tracking, especially when you look at the enterprise version, which is phenomenal. Again, the lot number functionality is going to require only the lot numbers, and the expiration number is what you need to support your lot number. A lot of people might think that, QuickBooks does not. It actually does, especially the enterprise version. Okay, it has a lot of different things from the UOM conversion. which some people might consider that, this is a very advanced functionality. You require unit of measure conversion. Let's say if you're buying a particular good in a particular unit of measure and then selling in a very different unit of measure, then you would need this functionality. You also have available to promise. Now, this is not going to be the same available to promise that you are going to get with some more sophisticated ERP systems, but it does provide available to promise on paper.
I'd be interested in seeing how this reports on some of the user interface stuff, because when you do multiple unit of measures, it can make your team crazy when they're trying to manage to it. And you got to have good visibility of what unit of measure you're looking at what point. So hopefully the reporting in the user interface makes that visible for folks.
Okay, by the way, they have back order functionality. Can you guys believe this? A lot of different ERP systems might not actually have the back order functionality. So on paper, if you are simply doing the checkbox, QuickBooks is probably going to win against probably SAP. So on paper, things are super fancy in terms of the way they can support these things. Okay, by the way, they do support the manufacturer's part number, which is considered to be slightly more advanced feature in a lot of different ERP systems, but QuickBooks Enterprise actually has the manufacturer part number as well. Moving right along, they have very sophisticated pricing structure. I have not seen this deep pricing, to be honest, in a lot of different ERP systems as well. So pricing is very complex just because that's a very finance function. That's why QuickBooks is actually supporting very deep pricing rules. Okay, so they do come with very industry-focused versions. For example, they are going to have very specific functionality for apparel manufacturers or the automotive parts or the food manufacturers, furniture manufacturers, etc. So they have some of those feature sets as well. That's the industry version. And now I'm actually going to move to FishBowl, unless you guys have any other comments with respect to QuickBooks.
Sam, I think you could kind of generalize that they do some things fairly well and they do other things very well, but there are some gaps in the things that they don't do, and that leading up into FishBowl, I think.
Fair statement, Ted.
Yeah. And it's a really good software package for that entry level accounting package. I mean, that's where they live. That's why they're so popular. I think it gets a little trickier the more they expand the capabilities. The ice just gets thinner there.
You got to remember, Phil, that it was designed as a do-it-yourself initially.
Right.
And as it's matured, it's gotten more complex and more feature-rich. But enterprise version or the higher-end versions are not something that most small business, mom-and-pop kind of businesses, which is where QuickBooks evolved from, can do. They need help, and they need a better understanding of the features and how it relates to their business.
And one final item on that, Ted, I think the decision to partner with FishBowl and have that be the platform that really led them into this expanded space versus trying to add that onto another version on QuickBooks was a very smart decision.
I would agree.
So here, if you look at the overarching picture of FishBowl, I think it does really, really well in the e-commerce space. It has a lot of different bells and whistles that you are going to require for e-commerce business. For example, let's say if you require connectivity with Shopify, you require connectivity with Amazon or some of those shipping carriers, it's going to do really, really well. It also has a manufacturing add-on, which is super sophisticated. But what I really want you to look at, the reviews. So here I have is the capabilities. These capabilities are probably going to be far richer than SAP, to be honest. Okay, when I look at the SAP, probably they are not going to have as many feature sets as your FishBowl, because FishBowl is really, really, really deep in terms of the kind of capabilities they are going to have in the software. The question is going to be whether it is really going to work or not. And that's what users have reported, that even though they might be like so many different features, it doesn't work. Okay, it doesn't scale because it's just too bloated overall from the capabilities perspective. Okay, so again, I don't know.
They get all the check boxes right, though.
Yeah.
If you are going to hit the check boxes, you are going to buy QuickBooks. Go ahead and buy QuickBooks and FishBowl, and then you are going to come back after 4 years.
100%.
Okay, guys. So this is the manufacturing FishBowl add-on. Again, it has a lot of different capabilities in supporting many different manufacturing situations. It's not designed to be, I guess it can do a lot of things from the hybrid manufacturing situations as well. But for the most part, I could not find a feature set that is missing from this list. The warehousing feature, again, the warehousing capabilities of FishBowl is extremely, extremely complex. Okay, they can do a lot more things. So now look at the difference between the screens versus the data sheet. Now, data sheet is the marketing hype in my mind. Now, look at the screen, how lean they are overall, in terms of the capabilities, the many options that you are going to have. If you are going to compare even with the smaller ERP system, their data sheets are going to be far leaner, but their screens are going to be richer. This is all marketing hype that Fishbowl is trying to make, even though they are claiming a lot of different capabilities, but a lot of those things either may be super lean or may not be there. So here we have the work orders, manufacturing orders. Manufacturing order is going to be super lean as well. Let's look at the next screen. The users have actually reported a lot of issues overall in this syncing. So I don't know how reliable this linking is going to be. Technology that they are using is fairly desktop. And I think it's from 1980s. They have not even upgraded some of their desktop capabilities. So that's why they are really struggling right now overall in their technical capabilities. And that could be the reason why users get a lot of error, because they are not advancing in terms of their technical capabilities. They are simply advancing in terms of their feature capability. But typically, if you are going to find any reliable ERP systems, what they are going to do is they are actually going to create that technical backbone that is going to support a decent sized business. So here you have a lot of functional capabilities, but if you look at the screen, they are fairly outdated. It feels as if it was done for Windows XP or Windows 7. Here, they can support a lot of different inventory. Again, inventory screen is fairly lean. They do have the lot number and expiration date. Fishbowl seems to be claiming that, the lot number capability that QuickBooks support is not enough, and that's why you probably need Fishbowl. But we could see that the default QuickBooks actually support a lot of different things from the lot perspective. They have very sophisticated, scheduling and coloring as well. I don't know if this is really going to work for the distribution organization, but it seems fairly sophisticated overall.
What is this schedule, Sam?
These are the work order steps, and you have your sales order that is scheduled for a specific day. You have the work orders that are scheduled for a specific day. So that's
process flow on the operations. Andy.
But it's not shop floor management.
No. What did you say, Phil?
Well, process flow and operations. It's trying to tell you where something is.
Right.
If I'm reading it right.
Yeah.
And I'm giving you a little sense of maybe a visual on constraint is the idea here. To say how much glue can I have in a certain area of the plant. Maybe it's trying to just give you a process flow and a capacity feel.
Right.
So,
okay.
This would probably be a mess to try to read in a real world situation where you have a significant amount of movement and or order flow. It'd just be a lot to look at.
I was going to say, I'm sure they do it a lot more of a macro scale.
But I mean, if you're going to do shop floor reporting and constraint management and with a variable shop, I mean, that's a completely different idea than this.
Completely. Okay, thanks, Sam.
And by the way, I mean, see, if you look at the slightly larger organization, even if you're going to have 10 people, typically they are going to be very compartmentalized overall in terms of the way they operate. For example, I mean, you are not going to find a team that is going to need the visibility into sales order as well as your manufacturing order. So I don't know if it is targeted for the salespeople, but typically in the ERP systems, you are going to have a dashboard either for procurement or for operations or for sales, because those teams are going to be slightly more siloed. They don't require all of that information on one screen, in my experience. I don't know what your experience has been.
Well, looking at this screen and looking at those resources they have in that center column, to a naive buyer or purchaser, they would absolutely assume this is capacity planning for the shop floor.
Yeah.
And maybe that's how they are trying to position. But I don't know if this is a real capacity planning.
Can't imagine. The water's deep on that topic.
That is.
When you say what's a real ERP system, now you're starting to get to what it is.
And besides,
It doesn't do resource balancing at all.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say, we all know what happens when we assume, though, right?
Yeah.
So this is the bill of material that they have. They have a lot of different things from the material perspective. Obviously, you are not going to have all of your, I don't know if they have the run and setup time. I could not see that in the screen, but you are really going to have the quantity, the UOM, no back flushing. So that is not going to be. Now, the interesting part. So some of the reviews that I have seen, which are amazing. And by the way, this review is from, I think this is slightly older one. I want to be fair with everybody. So this slightly older one, we'll look at the newer one, just because if they have updated anything. Okay, so here the user does say the comment related to your FIFO, right? If you are doing this, then obviously it is not going to be enough. So there are some concerns overall related to the way the costing is done. So I don't know if that is going to be the limitation of Fishbowl or it is really going to be the limitation of QuickBooks. But users
I think that's aged, Sam. I think they are now saying that they can use standard costing and they can use multiple techniques on inventory flow.
That's what that checklist said. Yeah,
that said they can now do that. I'm skeptical how you're going to use that platform to go to a standard cost system, but they're saying that you can do it.
Amazing, guys. So as you guys can see, one of the comments that I really got from this one is going to be, it is really difficult to customize. So you cannot really customize. You probably need to know the programming just because it's not really designed for the customization either. Now, let's look at some of the next comment. The comment, this is the great comment. That's what I like to see. Here it says does not integrate with QB, and that is going to be your QuickBooks. And I am actually shocked. This is coming from 2018. Obviously, they are going to claim that they are fully integrated, but the users are actually reporting that it probably does not do as good a job of integrating with QuickBooks.
Triple entry.
The sales order. So data is missing. Obviously, you have tons and tons of features, but then you are going to have a lot of bugs, a lot of issues in terms of using this. Obviously, it's a very legacy system, and they don't really have enough funds to be able to update the system, in my mind.
Well, it'll be real time as long as you enter it 3 times.
And hopefully it's the same thing that you're entering all 3 times.
Yeah, you're right, exactly.
And not averaging it.
Yeah.
Okay, so they have had problems in integrating with Shopify as well. So our expectation was that, it is probably going to work with Shopify, but even users have reported, issues when they are trying to integrate with Shopify. I don't know if it is with specific data flow or there are just in general integration issues, or this could be related to just this specific user. It is also from 2017, so it's hard to assess. Maybe they fixed this, but there are some issues that have been reported. Okay, let's look at some more. There are some issues related to support that they are trying to lock into this 30-day free trial. After that, they are going to take $10,000, and after that they don't really return that money because the trial period is gone, which is shocking in my opinion.
It's interesting that he says it seems very fishy, considering the name of the software.
Just to be fair, Andy, though, some of these buyers could be the first time ERP buyers,
I was
and they might
making
not
a joke,
have appetite.
I was just making a joke. That's okay.
Yeah, but this is a real review, right? It's coming from 2021, by the way. Now,
this
is not the
recent.
old one.
This is recent. Yeah,
that's recent. That's no good, guys. That's no good.
No, too recent.
Yeah.
Okay, let's look at some more.
Another one that's new.
So this is a fairly detailed, they were very pleased with the support team for a change. A lot of people have reported issues with the support team. Okay, but here, this guy seemed slightly fair in terms of the review, the way he reviewed, as you can see, the quality of the review. And one of the things that he mentioned that the UI is very outdated. It feels as if it was done for Windows 98 XP application. It is really Java based. So yeah, I think they are facing a lot of issues overall.
On this one, definitely people should really look at that cost of ownership. I saw a comparison to Sage X3, and because of FishBowl's pricing strategy, they were actually more expensive.
You're kidding.
Nope.
One thing I think that nobody has brought up here, and maybe it's just me, because you're going from one UI to another. Okay, it's like hitting a speed bump at 50 miles an hour. And that's true of anything, most anything where you have plugins and add-ons from third parties. This is meant for a smaller business, whether it's an enterprise or a small business. And it's very distracting when you have to have different ways of approaching the software to do different operations. So, and that's not just Fishbowl. That's true of a lot of the add-ins, you need a consistent user interface and customer experience. Otherwise, especially in this market, you're in trouble.
No question. Separate users, separate GUIs on these add-ons just makes it, especially because they're targeted at smaller companies, makes it almost impossible to learn. There's so much effort to learn multiple systems like that.
And guys, one last point related to the licensing model and the pricing. I think they have a lot on the data sheet in terms of the capabilities that they support, but that is not included as part of your default package that you are going to buy. I think they charge roughly $2,000 for each of the function that you are trying to buy. So yeah, and the function could be very detailed. So yeah, I kind of agree with a lot of you that sometimes it could be far more expensive than, let's say, if you are going to buy some of these smaller ones. And some people actually commented that your NetSuite could be cheaper than your FishBowl. So if you are going to get NetSuite, then what is the point of going for FishBowl?
Yeah, and their pricing model is that upfront money, and then, like you say, to charge for some of the add-ons. And so usually I found that the ERP market, you at least have a little easier shot at comparing the different pricing strategies. In e-commerce, it's very difficult, as you guys know. But this is definitely a unique pricing strategy compared to the normal SaaS stuff that everybody else is doing.
Yeah, before you're done, you might as well go for SAP.
Just sorry to extend, I know you're a little long, but two things that weren't mentioned on FishBowl is the manufacturing software, as best as I can tell, is on-prem, and the warehouse software is both in the cloud and on-prem, and they're promoting the in the cloud. And FishBowl has also released a package called BoxStorm, which is also an inventory structure, inventory software that is in the cloud. So it's confusing what their product roadmap is, and maybe that's something also that people can try to get a better feel for if they're going to look at this software to really what's the offerings. It's a little confusing.
Yeah, so I think they are trying to launch for the cloud version as well for the QuickBooks Online. Obviously, it's not going to be as robust as the desktop because QuickBooks is now not as robust. And I don't know if QuickBooks is really trying to get there in terms of the way they were in the desktop world. It may not be possible just because they might not be able to scale if they try to have so many different features that they had in the desktop
version. But I'm talking about FishBowl itself. FishBowl, the manufacturing software, is only on-prem, as best as I could tell.
I think the box one that you are talking about is on cloud.
But that's a warehouse. That's a inventory management software.
Right.
Is what the BoxStorm is, and this software has one inventory management that you can get in the cloud, but the manufacturing one that has all of those features that we talked about is not cloud software.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me.
I cannot thank our guests enough for coming on the show, for sharing their knowledge and journey. I always pick up learnings from our guests, and hopefully you learned something new today. If you want to learn more about Andy Pradigo, head over to essoft.com. It's essoft.com. If you want to learn more about Phil Querper, head over to ringlingbusinesssolutions.com. It's ringlingbusinesssolutions.com. If you want to learn more about Dave Chrysler, head over to thechrysler.club. It's TheChrysler.club. If you want to learn more about Ted Needleman, connect with him on LinkedIn and Twitter. Links and more information will also be available in the show notes. If anything in this podcast resonated with you and your business, you might want to check other related episodes, including the interview with Andy Pradigo, who discusses why ERP demos are designed to deceive and why ERP salespeople are more incentivized to sell their products than the success of their customers. Also, the interview with Chris Gherardini, who discusses the importance of costing granularity and why it is crucial to understand your product's profitability. Also, don't forget to subscribe and spread the word among folks with similar backgrounds. If you have any questions or comments about the show, please review and rate us on your favorite podcasting platform or DM me on any social channels. I'll try my best to respond personally and make sure you get help. Thank you, and I hope to catch you on the next episode of the WBS Podcast.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.